In this video, we will learn about how Boolean values are used in VBA programming. The Boolean data type accepts only two states, true or false, and is designed for logical processing. It occupies 2 bytes of memory, and a variable declared as a Boolean has a default value of false. Booleans are like bits, which can accept only 1 or 0. In fact, if we convert 1 or any other non-zero number to a Boolean using the Boolean type conversion function, we will get a true. So here, the num1 variable has the value 1, and this is the Boolean type conversion function. Let's run the macro. We get true. And if we convert a 0, which is the num2 variable, we get a false. Let's check it out. On the other hand, if we convert a false to a number, we get a 0. And if we convert a true to a number, we get a -1. So here the state variable is a Boolean and it has the value false. And let's convert the Boolean value to a long. Let's print it out. We get a 0. And for true, we get -1. In summary, 0 is always associated with false and any other number will be considered true. That being said, we should never use numbers in place of Booleans and should always use the keywords true and false directly. So in the following code, we are checking whether both these numbers are equal. And we will store the result of this comparison in the compare variable, which is a Boolean. At the moment, the numbers are not equal. Number 1 is 1 and number 2 is 0. If the numbers are equal, the compare variable will store a true and a false otherwise. And within this if statement, we will check for the value that is held within the compare variable. And in our first scenario, if the value stored within the compare variable evaluates to a 0, then we'll print out the below statement stating that both the numbers are not equal. Let's run the macro. The statement gets printed because the numbers were not equal. However, writing code this way is considered as bad practice because if we mean false, we should write false and not 0. So let's change the 0 to a false. Using anything other than true or false to evaluate a Boolean value can lead to unexpected results. And that being said, note that the Boolean values true and false are keywords in VBA. And in our default VBA setting, keywords are shown in the color blue, as you can see here. But a more reliable indicator to confirm whether we are using the correct keyword and not any other misspelled word would be to type false in all lowercase, click outside the statement, and the first alphabet F will capitalize. Every keyword always capitalizes its first alphabet. So for instance, if we had misspelled this word and clicked outside, the word wouldn't capitalize. Another reason for mentioning this is that we shouldn't write true or false as strings by enclosing them within double quotes. So not like this. If we run this code, so let's run it, we will still get the same result as the false Boolean value. That is because VBA implicitly converts the string false to the Boolean value false. But same as the case for zeros and ones, to get accurate results, we shouldn't rely on implicit conversions. And just FYI, this Boolean expression is better written with the not operator. So like this, which produces the same result. But for now, the not operator is a topic for another lesson. Okay, so in summary, use true and false directly and avoid using numbers or strings in their place. Boolean values are a fundamental concept in programming. They allow us to evaluate outcomes and decide how to proceed within our code. Let's look at a practical example. We have a form here. We can enter a name and email address, click submit. We get a confirmation message, okay, and the data gets added to the bottom of the output sheet. Blank any value, click submit. We get a message to enter a value. Click OK. And no data has been added to the bottom of the sheet. This logic is powered by Booleans. Let's look at the code. We are not going to build this code, but we will talk about it and modify the conditional logic shortly. Observe the comments which mention what each section of code is performing. We grab the details, validate the name and the email address, paste the values into the output sheet, and display the confirmation message. The usage of Booleans is within this validate section. We will cover if statements separately in this course, but for now, let's understand how this logic is performed. If the customer name is blank, then we prompt the user to enter a name and exit the sub. And the exit sub statement ensures that all this subsequent code is ignored. And we do the same for the email address as well. But the golden question is, where is the Boolean value? The rule of an if statement is that it evaluates each condition to a true or false. If the condition or the question is this customer name is blank evaluates to a true, only then will we execute the logic within the if statement. So this condition is the same as writing equal to true. If we run our code, we get the same result. But is equal to true is implied by the if statement and we do not need to mention it separately. Comparison and logical operators all evaluate to a Boolean value. We have already seen the equal to sign as a comparison operator, and just a note, the equal to sign is also an assignment operator. We can see the equal to sign in action when we are assigning string variables up here. The assignment operator assigns the value on the right hand side of the operator to the element on the left, whereas a comparison operator evaluates the outcome on both sides of the operator to a true or false Boolean value. Okay, back to comparison operators and Boolean. The is operator is used when comparing objects, and the like operator is used when looking for patterns in strings. And then we have logical operators. We can combine two or more conditions and evaluate them simultaneously using the AND operator or the OR operator. For example, we can use the OR operator to check whether the customer name is blank or the customer email is blank. If either of the field is blank, then we'll warn the user and exit the sub. So we can write both conditions together using an OR operator. Let's modify the message. Let's first run the code to make sure we have written it correctly. And we get a modified message, which means our logic is working. In the background, the if statement is evaluating condition 1 to true and condition 2 to true as well. Look at this table called the truth table, which shows us all the possible scenarios for our logic. If condition 1 is true and condition 2 is false, the complete OR condition evaluates to true and we exit the sub. Same for the other way around. And same if condition 1 and condition 2 are true as well. But if condition 1 and condition 2 are both false, then the OR condition evaluates to a false and we don't exit the sub. We'll see more detailed examples of comparison operators, including the mind-twisting NOT operator, in the lesson on if statements. Okay, so far we've looked at Boolean values that are derived as the outcome of comparison between values. We can even assign Boolean values to elements such as variables, properties, and functions. Let's check that out next. What we're going to do now is a bit of an overkill for a current example. Let's create a Boolean variable. And if the customer name or the customer email is blank, then we will set the Boolean variable to true. Remember, the initial value of the Boolean variable will be its default, which is false. And if this Boolean variable is true, then we will display our message and exit the sub. Let's run our code. We get a message, which means our new logic is working. Yes, our code prior to using the Boolean variable was shorter and probably even more efficient. However, using a variable has its benefits. We are not forced to exit the sub when we find that either of both cells are empty. We can carry that information forward in the Boolean variable and then perhaps perform some checks between these two lines and later on take the decision to exit the sub. Another instance where we come across Boolean values is the output of functions. Many inbuilt functions in VBA return the result as true or false. For example, we have the isEmpty function, which we saw in the lesson on data types. IsEmpty returns a true if the value of the variant string is empty or either blank. So let's replace our logic with the isEmpty function and make sure that the condition is set to equal to true. Explicitly mentioning equal to true is optional, so let's remove it and do the same here. Now, the isEmpty function will only work on a variant, so in our case, the string subtype of a variant. So we need to change the declaration. Let's step through our code F8 onto the if statement. We can see that the missing input variable is being set to true. However, if we hover over the customer name variable, we can see that it's empty. We can stop our code. Okay, so this is Boolean as an output of a built-in function. We can even build a custom function to return a Boolean value. We will learn functions in depth in a later lesson. For now, you can follow along with the concept of what we are trying to achieve rather than the code itself. We can perform our validation checks in a separate function procedure and call that function from within this current main function. So let's do that. We will create a function. The function will accept the customer name and customer email address as parameters. And the function will return a Boolean value. We'll perform the same logic. So we can just copy over this logic, switch the variables to reflect our parameter names. If the customer name or the customer email is empty, then the function should return a true, else it will return a false. We can make this function a lot more sleeker, but our focus for today is only on getting the function to return a Boolean value. Let's go back to the main sub. We can remove the code that we don't need. So we don't need anything to do with the missing input Boolean variable. And for the validation, let's call our isDataMissing function instead. Pass the arguments, which are the customer name and the customer email. While the true part is not necessary, we'll just leave it in there. Okay, so that's done. Our function will accept two input values as parameters, and if either one of them is blank or empty, it will return a true and pass the true Boolean value back to the main sub, where this true equals to true condition will be satisfied, and we will exit the sub. Go to our main sheet, run the macro. We get a warning message implying that the code is running as expected. And these were some examples regarding using Boolean values either within VBA's built-in logic or within our own custom logic. Boolean data types can accept only one of two values, either true or false. Booleans are used to make logical decisions within our code. They are used in if statements in conjunction with comparison and logical operators. They are also used as outputs of built-in and custom-built functions. In the next video, we will deep dive into ways of working with a string data type.